Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm back.
Okay, I have the recording started and we can begin with planning and zoning if you're good, Mr. Burley.
Oh, yes, I am, Dave.
Okay, let me go with the manager's update. It's not too long, but I do have a couple of quick items I want to inform you about. First, I have some reminders. I don't have any changes or additions to them, so I'm just going to bypass that. I became aware of an article that was from I guess, a report on WTAE of a group that is buying up properties in area municipalities, the name being VB or Vinebrook Homes, and also something called SFR3 out of California. And I checked with staff to find out if we had any of these, any of our homes were purchased by this group, and I did come up with 6 that I have listed there for you. Sorry, hold on one second. I'm sorry. I have 6 that I had listed there for you. As far as I know, there's no problem with them, but I did attach the article from WTAE, which anybody who's paying attention to us today can find on WTAE's website. So I won't go into it detail, but I did give the detail on my notes to council. Apparently these groups are not being very attentive to their properties, and apparently they are buying them and renting them out. So I'm going to be checking with Dawn tomorrow and Dave Naylor to make sure they're aware of these. They may already be aware of them, but I want to make sure in particular that these anything that's purchased by these 2 companies, they're made aware of. The article cites an example of Portview Borough where there are some issues there, but you can take a look at it. It's attached to the notes I sent you. I don't have anything more to say about it just yet, but we'll keep an eye on it. And in the future, if there's anything going on, I'll make sure that Dawn is aware of it and can report on it. The other item I have, if you recall last week, I had mentioned at, I think, Ops and Policy that PennDOT is getting ready to do some tree work along Ardmore. They're going to do it very soon. And that Dawn Branzel and Joe from Carl's, who's been acting as an arborist periodically for us, sat down with PennDOT, and they constructed a letter, which I also attached to your notes, to send to PennDOT, asking them for certain considerations, including the ones I mentioned last week. I don't know if Don may want to talk more about that during his report, but I at least wanted to show you what we were doing with that and how we were asking PennDOT to cooperate with us and not just come in and do something without our involvement. Now, they did originally, to be fair, they were the ones who did contact us about this, although they did not give us very much time, but they did contact us about the fact that they're going to be doing this, and they did invite input. So that's a positive. Whether they'll, it seemed to me that what Dawn and Joe said was they were generally favorable as far as the things we were asking them to look at. So take a look at that letter. And again, I'm going to stop here unless you have a question for me. Dawn may have a couple more things to say about that whenever he does his report, or you may want to ask Dawn some questions about that. But I have nothing else unless you have a question for me. Okay, I'm done.
I have a question.
Patty?
Did
Yes,
they
Patty?
agree to replace trees in the area?
They haven't agreed to anything yet. We told them what we wanted.
Okay.
We sent them the letter that talks about replacing a number of trees in certain areas. But that's all we have so far. This letter was just, literally this just happened a few days before the meetings last week. And then the letter came out on Friday, or maybe it was yesterday. I don't remember now. It just went to them. I don't have anything more on that other than that. Anything else from anybody? Okay, I'm done.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Burley.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Okay, Don, do you have anything for us?
Yeah, Bill, last week I had a special meeting with the Tree and Shrub Committee, and we kind of feel that it's very important that we get 0.1% of a mill, which I do believe is $30,000. to be put aside for trees only. As I've been telling you every time, these trees are getting worse and worse and worse, and we just need more money. So we really feel that it's imperative that we get this extra additional monies to put aside for trees only. So I don't know. I hope you consider it strongly.
Well, I heard too that that's an issue from another source, that we need to put together some money to really get caught up on the pruning and everything. And 30,000 was a number I heard too.
Right, right.
Yes,
So
Bill?
please
Bill?
consider.
Yes, Bill? Bill, yes? Can't hear you, Bill?
The weeds on this percentage, et cetera. We're looking at a flat number. I attended the meeting and I support this. For years, and especially this year, I've heard council people say that we need to put more money into the pruning and the removal of trees that are dangerous. And every time that was brought up, I agree, and we need to do it. But you got to put the money into it. For 15 years, I've been singing that tune. So, or humming that tune, I should say, singing that song. So I support this. We need to do it. And this involves trees in the borough and also a lot of trees that are on people's properties. We've been going in, there's been dangerous limbs hanging, and we've had to go and cut them out. And Mr. Branzel, I need a little help from you. So we're talking about pruning and removal in addition to what we already have in the budget. Now, these trees that are associated with various properties, they're in the borough right away. And also some of them share are actually in the borough right away and in or on the property. For example, mine, when it was put in, it has grown so large that part of it is actually in my yard. Technically speaking, that would be.
That's correct.
And then we have the front of it, which is in the borough right away. So we go in there because it's a right of way. And technically speaking, if you wanted to cut my tree down, you could cut it down and I couldn't say anything about it. I would have no legal recourse because that's the way the rule is set up. So the borough has the control over this. They go into the right of way. They work in there. We pay tax dollars, either that or we have our men do it. I've watched them where they've taken out dangerous limbs because somebody could get seriously hurt if one of those limbs were to fall on them. So I just want to drive that home that these trees are not only like on borough property somewhere, like maybe behind the fire hall where a tree has to be taken out. They're actually in people's yards associated with the right of way. Am I correct there, Mr. Branzel?
Is correct, Bill. Because of the age of the tree, it expands and it grows partially onto private property and partially onto borough property, borough right of way.
Okay,
So
thank
that
you.
is correct.
Thank you for that.
Don, you have anything else? Are we finished?
I think Steve has covered everything that I was going to cover about the representatives from PennDOT. Last week that we met with the engineers, Joseph B. Fay, who's going to do the contracting work, and the tree company. And everybody was on board and agrees that the borough will not suffer in any way. They will replace everything back to the way it was before. So anybody have any questions for me regarding that?
Okay, well, doesn't seem like we have anybody for you, Don.
There's going to be,
Go ahead.
there are going to be several trees removed. There's probably going to be at least 15 or 20 trees in the median that's going to be removed. And they agreed. They were very, very good about the whole meeting that we had. And they will put everything back to the way it was. So I don't think we have anything to be concerned about there.
Wonderful. That's great.
Marcus has hand up.
Yes, Marcus. Oh, yes.
I'm Don. I think you know about that. A resident in Roxbury Road approached me about like the board took down her tree, and I think they need to grind it and then replace it with a new tree. Do you have any updates on that?
Not right at this moment, but I will look into it.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. There's no committee business report at this time. So if there's no questions or concerns, Steve, we're done.
Okay, I'll move to finance. Just give me a couple of seconds to switch my files over here. And I'm okay with to go with the manager's update for finance, Mr. Marco, if you're
Yes,
ready.
please proceed.
Okay. I have a number of issues that all relate to the second draft of the general fund budget. I split them up into 5 or 6 different sections, and I'm going to lead off with the budget, but some of the answers that I may have to some of your questions may come under upcoming items B, C, D, E, or F. First, what I've given you is a spreadsheet with a second draft of the budget. And my recommendation is that this be a preliminary budget. Now, I want to mention the tree thing in a minute. I'll get to that. But regardless, I just want to give you a couple background statements. First, none of the other budgets have changed any, so I did not give you any updates to them. Second, I know there were some people who were questioning the first draft that I gave you last time, and I think you need to understand, and I know I said this last year, but just to repeat, I don't do the budget like today's second draft, for example, in one day. I've been putting this together since the last meeting in October, and the October budget, don't forget, we started in August. So there are different things that I'm looking at, and I have to pick a date when I'm going to stop looking. And so whether it be trees, or whether it be police, or whether it be salaries or benefits or budget reserve or whatever, I have to pick a time when I stop. If I try to update things up to the last minute, you wouldn't have anything right now. But the good thing is that a preliminary budget is just that. It's a preliminary budget. It's something that could still be changed. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. So I just wanted to make sure I was clear about that. And I can explain further if necessary, if you want to talk about the process. What I'm going to do, just to make it easy, including for anybody who may be paying attention to us on Zoom right now, I'm going to just share my screen with some of these notes from Finance Committee. Whoops, that's not it. Right there, so that other people can see it. The second draft of the budget that I gave you is now $6,679,000 budget. The first draft was $6,671,000 plus. And I gave you both revenues and expenditures as a separate handout. I only made certain changes based on what feedback I got from council or from individual members in the last month. And those changes on the spreadsheet are in blue. Now, I'm not going to show that spreadsheet right now, but I am going to talk about the changes. Basically, they are as follows. And the line items are showing here on your screen. The real estate tax I changed because the county's taxable assessed value for the Forest Hills Borough increased on October 22nd to the numbers you see there. So I increased the estimate for those revenues. 1 mil of tax, since we brought up the idea of 1 mil with the tree budget, I want to mention, would bring in under that taxable assessed value $383,000 plus. Excuse me, I'm sorry to cough in your ears there. However, please remember that there are always delinquents and there are always appeals. So with 1 mil, you're not likely to get $383,000. You're more likely to get approximately $368,000. if you were taking that number, looking at 1/10 of a mil, I'm sorry, looking at 1/10 of a mil, let's say, for example, for trees, that would be about $36,863 for trees, approximately. Okay. But the key thing I want to mention here before we talk, because what you talk about with trees is up to you later. I'm not going to go into that right now. And again, you can always change what I have here. It's not a problem. So that's one thing I changed, the real estate tax. I also changed the deed transfer tax because that is increasing significantly as of October 31st. So I raised that up as well. Now, any of these Act 511 taxes, that they're so-called Act 511 taxes like deed transfer, are always you're always gambling with them, because what you've collected now doesn't mean you're going to collect that next year or in future years. But it seems like right now, with the way the economy is, a lot of homes are being sold and a lot of people are refinancing. So in that case, we're seeing some changes in some of those Act 511 taxes. So I thought it was realistic to do that. And then under pool admissions, there were two line items, 01367, 020, and 022, that reflect admissions. And because council reduced the rate, and we'll talk about the fee resolution a little bit later, because council reduced the rate to approximately half, I cut how much I anticipated getting in based on what we got in this year. But as somebody had suggested on council, I did not reduce it by a half, because the assumption is that hopefully more people will take advantage of this and come to the pool. So I reduced it by 25%, the amount I estimated that we get in revenues. And that's how the new revenues in this draft of the budget changed. Anybody have any questions about those before I go on to expenditures? Okay. In expenditures, all salary-related items in various accounts were changed to reflect a recommendation I got for non-union salaries. And you know what? I'm going to bring that up. Whoops, that's not it. Sorry. I gave you a table like this last time, but I don't think everybody saw this. And apparently there were some changes that were suggested. This page represents the changes. I've given this to you as part of my budget message. Of course, it's different. The final, whatever is decided as the final one, will be in my budget message. I also showed it to you on the PowerPoint slide that I had last month. I was asked to make some significant changes to pool. And if you recall, I was also asked by committee members to reflect an increase in the part-time public works. Now, part-time public works isn't a great deal, even though it looks like it's a huge change, because you're only talking about maybe 3 people for a summer hire. The lifeguards, of course, we're talking about a little bit longer, but still a summer hire, a little bit more work that they might be doing, but still a summer hire. This was what was recommended to me, I understand, from council's discussion at the end of the meeting last week. And if I would have been able to stay for that meeting, I would have explained some things a little bit more detail to you. I can't really do that now since that involves personnel, so I'm just going to move on from there. But you do have that new chart. And then I did make changes as follows as well. I ended the police canine program with the 2 line items you see here with my mouse going over. I reduced the budget contingency. We had estimated that higher for 2021 because of the pandemic. Now, while the pandemic is not over, I didn't think the larger amount was required, so I did cut that back more. I also reduced budget reserve because my estimate is your target of 7% is going to be exceeded even with the number I have in there now. And that's what your policy is, 7%. I didn't want to take it down much more than that, though, because it still provides a nice buffer. And of course, you can always move budget reserve money as you see fit as a council. And then the transfer to Capital One, I reduced that sum also, since council is going to be using the bond issue funds for several items. And we're also using liquid fuels to purchase a truck. So that's how I came up with this budget that is $6,679,805 in a second draft. Anybody have any questions about the expenditures? then let me mention, I always give you these notes. I'm not going to read them in great detail, but remember, when you approve a preliminary budget, it's only preliminary, and everybody doesn't understand that. So that's why I'm asking you to use these numbers or numbers like these with a slight adjustment on the 17th. If you want to add that tree thing, we can always do that, but that's something you folks may be talking about later on a committee of the whole, so I'm not going to go into that right now. But just remember, preliminary is just preliminary. If anybody is watching this from the public, council can always change everything in that budget before they approve a final budget in December. You have to show your best estimate as of November and advertise that. That's what you're legally required to do. So it doesn't mean you're locked into that at all. You can still change it. And of course, because this is an election year, council in January may choose to reopen that budget. The second thing I want to remind people about, I always remind you about this as well. Budgeting is not a science, it's a plan. It's not a guarantee of funding. You can read all that stuff, etc. I just wanted to show that to everybody real quick in case they were watching on YouTube. Does anybody have any questions about my recommendation of this as a preliminary budget? Again, you may want to make some tweaks. That's fine. But I can put this on for the 17th. There are some other things under the next few items that I want to explain too that sort of relate to budget. So I'm going to move on from there since I don't see any questions. First, the capital improvements plan. I don't have that changed at all from the draft I gave you last month. My recommendation still is continue to review the plan. If you have anything else you'd like to add or change, you have time in December to do that. And just simply understand that all the projects that are shown in that plan are not necessarily going to be funded. Anybody who wants to buy anything from that plan will have to go to council first to get approval for any of those capital improvements items. The next thing I wanted to point out to you was the fee resolution draft. I think I have that here. I gave you the pages that only reflect changes, and there are 3 of them starting with section 19 in the fee resolution. And that's where Cindy gave me recommendations for changing the passes for pool and tennis. Now you'll see that some of them may not be quite 50%, they may be 51, 52%, something like that of the old budget. That's because it was thought that to facilitate getting money into the office was better to use a more rounded number instead of going with dollars and cents. So that's the reason why she gave me those numbers. You can see the numbers she has. I'm showing them on the screen here. It only changes the pass numbers for Forest Hills residents, as you suggested. And then the daily admission also changes again for Forest Hills residents. And then finally, the senior citizens for pool, and the last day of the pool season changes as well. That's the doggy swim on Labor Day. And then if you look down further, you'll see that there are, wait a minute, I believe we did include, well, let me see the tennis thing here. The tennis passes did change as well. And I believe we included in here wording, although I'm not seeing it now, maybe it was in a different page I didn't put in here, wording that you had recommended allowing anybody who receives a pool pass to also get a tennis pass. Is that correct? I believe, anybody disagree with that? I think that was decision, right? If you got a pool pass, you got a tennis pass. I thought I had, oh, here it is. Any borough resident who purchases a pool pass and a tennis pass at the same time will receive a total discount of $20. And if you look at the pass costs down here, you'll see, oh, wait a minute. No, that's not right. That's not right at all.
Yeah,
I
hey,
had
Steve, that's
something in
something.
there. Go ahead. Yeah,
Sorry, that's
Tom.
something that I brought up originally, at least. And I don't know if it needs to be in the fee resolution specifically, because I think at least what I brought up was opening the interior gates to the tennis courts while the pool's open. So if you have a pool pass, the tennis courts are always open to you while the pool is open.
That might be true. Marcus, did you have something about that? Marcus?
I don't think we really discussed it in details, but I think Tom's idea is good. So anyone who has a pool pass automatically has a tennis pass.
So you just, in other words, just open the gate and doesn't need to be worded anywhere in particular here.
I mean, people who have a pool pass can play tennis, but people who don't have a pool pass, they still have to buy a tennis pass. I think that's
Right.
what Tom suggested. I think it makes
Okay.
sense.
Yeah,
Right,
and then
so
if you wanted to play at off hours, you'd still get a tennis pass, but
Okay, so I do not need it worded in this, in other words.
No, that's fine.
Okay, all right, good. Getting back to Finance Committee, that's the draft of the fee resolution. It's the only changes I got. Everything else will stay the same except for trash recycling. I don't know what that will be yet until I see what the bids come in at. And then I will give you a recommendation, hopefully in the December meeting, as far as what would happen. But anything related to the budget first, you can still change that in December. If it changes the preliminary budget, it's not a problem because you won't approve a final one until your December meeting. And second, it tends to balance out so that whatever the cost is usually is made up by the fee structure. So you should have essentially a net zero change there, maybe a few dollars change, but nothing major. So that's the only thing that's not shown in the fee resolution yet. Everything else you can see just exactly as worded, either on the website or in your budget book. It's on both. The fee resolution that's current is in both the website and the budget book. So except what I've just shown you, nothing else changes. But you don't, if you recall, we always pass a complete fee resolution because that keeps everything in one place. We used to have them scattered all over the place. It was a mess. So this way we don't have that. I'm going to move on to the cash flow if you don't have any questions for me so far. Okay, cash flow. I gave you a copy of that attached to your agenda, and people will be able to see that here through the end of October. Of course, we're talking about entering November. You'll notice that the cash flow, I'm going to just use the chart here. The cash flow went down significantly going into November from October. This was 119,000 in cash. But you should also notice that September was much higher than normal. There are a couple of reasons for that. Not that we're short on money or going to have a deficit. I mean, something unusual could happen in the next 6-8 weeks, and sure, you could have one, but I don't think that's going to happen. But notice September was higher. That's because usually in September, we paid the MMO for the pension, but we didn't get a chance to do that until October. So that was a higher number coming out of October than normal. The second thing that was a change is that we're noticing that the earned income tax is coming, collections are down this year in this quarter. They were doing fine for a while, but now they're down. I'm not sure what the reason is. We're trying to investigate that, see if there's anything going on. I don't know if it has anything to do with the pandemic or the unemployment rate or what have you, but it is down. We expected it would be pretty much on track with the budget. It still may be, but it's down right now. The third thing, there was a difference between cash this year and last year. Don't forget, we also got pandemic funds last year, and they went directly into the general fund budgets because we used the police salaries to justify getting the pandemic funds. You have pandemic funds now, but they have not been put anywhere, like in the general fund budget, for example. So last year you had that additional cash, this year you don't. Okay, so that's the reason why cash flow is down. I don't think it's a problem, but definitely when you get your numbers from Wendy, our treasurer, later on, look at the full budget that she gives you. You should take a look at that to see if you noticed any unusual items or any issues. If nobody has any questions, that leads me into the ARPA stuff. I'm repeating this from October because I gave you this calculation, if you remember, and I'll push this chart up a little bit in a minute. And I said that it's preliminary. I think it's correct. I'm not sure. I want to look at it. I'm still not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure now this is a pretty good calculation. And if you recall, it comes from the Government Finance Officers Association as a recommendation for how to calculate your revenue replacement for use of ARPA funds. Now, one of the things you had suggested was using them for sewer related items, and that still may be something you may want to do. That's up to you. But I just wanted to point out to you that this calculation shows that based on GFOA's formula, we have the right if we want to, if council wants to use a significant portion of ARPA funds to replace money lost in the general fund budget. That's, again, entirely up to you, but I believe this chart's correct. A revenue reduction of $513,000, you can see a 6.5% reduction. I'd like to have everybody else take a look at this again, just to make sure before you make any decisions. I'm not suggesting you do one thing or another with it right now, but it does show you that there is a justification. And since we're going to be audited, this would be something you could use as a justification if you wanted to.
Steve,
Okay,
can I have a
go
question?
ahead.
Here?
Yes.
I believe the sewer allocation fund was not that much. It was 237,000. Is that right? Give or take a bit.
That was a rough number for the,
Yeah.
the
And so we would
Alcoa
have
Sand.
enough, we would have enough if we get a whole of the 513 to put the balance of that into the general fund revenue replacement. Is that correct?
Well, yes, we're actually gonna get 600 some thousand. We got
Okay.
300 some right now.
Okay,
And we're gonna get 600 by this time next year.
okay.
So yeah,
So we
total.
can allocate part of it to the sewer and have the balance go to revenue replacement in the general fund.
Yes, the main thing is you have to make sure that you are able to justify what you do.
Yeah.
And that's again, another reason why if you don't need to make a decision, I'm not recommending you do it right now.
Right.
You know, this is money that you have to review, and this calculation is something you can review, see if you have any problems with it. I think it's pretty close to being correct though,
Okay,
after having another month to look at it.
okay, thank you.
The only other thing I have to add, excuse me, is that don't forget with bond issue spending, you were making some decisions for items that I'm showing here. And I didn't change any of this yet. I know that we're still looking at some trucks, but if you remember, we talked about this last month and decided we should get some of the things that paid off first before you did anything additional. Like, for example, the backhoe, that's something you're paying through this. You already did, don't forget, take some of that $500,000 and put it as a down payment on the fire truck. Now, I don't know if that was supposed to be temporary or was going to be the main use of that. That's up to you to decide. But I just want to remind you, you did use it for the down payment on that new fire truck. That was decided months before you guys decided to use the bond issue for truck purchases and work at the rec lodge. Okay, so I'm keeping this on here for you as a reminder. I don't really have anything more to say about that. The only thing I would sum up is, again, my recommendation is to use the budget I just gave you as a preliminary budget. If you want to make a tweak later on with the trees, you certainly can do that either before the preliminary budget or in December before you do the final budget. That's up to you. If you don't have any objection to that, though, that's my recommendation. Use that as a preliminary budget for advertising in November.
Okay, Marcus, hand up.
Did you raise the tree money? I believe we wanted to raise it by 30,000. It's already in that budget, or?
No, it isn't. It's
No,
still
it
a
isn't.
three. Yeah, it needed.
Because that would be an additional 1/10 of a mil. So you would have eight plus 1/10 of a mil.
I mean, we said we don't want to make it into mills. We just want to put a line item like $30,000 more, independent of mills. It's about 1/10 of a mil, I know, but we don't want to put it in like that.
Well, if you do that, if you're not calculating 1/10 of a mil, then I have to go back and recalculate the budget and find $30,000.
Exactly.
It's not balanced based on 30,000 right now.
Yes, but we did.
Additional for
We
trees.
don't want to raise taxes by 1/10 of a mil. We just want to put $30,000 into the budget and find it
What
somewhere.
would you recommend reducing then, Marcus?
I don't know. We just find it somewhere.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's what I think.
Yes, thanks. Marcus, I appreciate that.
Oh,
Frank,
Marcus, you got teed up, buddy. Teed up.
Frank,
Hey,
Frank, you had your hand up.
Audience use trap.
I know, but we all agree. I mean, we have stairways. I'm sure Steve has some magic tricks in his bag.
Oh, God, yes, sure. I'll
Mr.
give you my
think we
credit
all
card.
agree.
Mr. Tomasic has a comment now. Mr. Tomasic.
I actually do have a legitimate.
Well, Mr. Tomasic has a comment
Yep, that's
first.
fine. That's fine.
Bill?
I am not going to vote for any tax increase, number one. Number two, we do have funds available in other areas, as Mr. Morris has indicated with our reserves and so on. I can't sit here and listen to people who all year long have complained that we need to put money into these trees. I don't know how many times I heard it at the meeting. And now they're saying, well, we can't find it in the budget and we have to raise millage. We do not have to do that. That's why I stated at the beginning, I'm not tying the $30,000 into a millage increase. That was said without me being part of it. It was a suggestion in terms of how much money that they wanted. They started out with $500,000, and we told them that was out of the question. So that's going to be my position. No increase in taxes. You find the money in the reserve or wherever you need to do it with this money that's coming in, or you shift it around. I will not vote for a tax increase.
Okay, I'll find 30,000. Marcus, go ahead.
I just want to say what Bill,
Wait,
I
Frank
think
had-
we all agree to do that exactly the same thing, not to raise taxes and to find 30,000. I think I'm not sure it was the last business meeting. I think we just agreed, in one of the last meetings last month, we agreed on that.
Frank, you have
Okay.
your-
Yeah, just a couple thoughts on this. So I think everybody's on the same page with regards to no increase in taxes to fund the trees. I just wanted to remind everybody, and I think we talked about this at the last meeting as well. We do have a number of trees that we have basically stored behind the rec center and kind of what I'll refer to as our nursery, but basically there were the trees that kind of lined the Greensburg Pike at one point before we began construction on the new building. So we have some of those that we can phase in for tree replacement as we start to, if we need to take down trees as part of our ongoing tree maintenance program. And we could also use that as a means of kind of slowly but surely kind of phasing in this gradual. And I think also it should not be a formal ordinance of any sort that we adopt where it's mandated we use 1/10 of a mil,
Right.
but it should be like a policy or a goal that we establish to dedicate that 1/10 of a mil towards tree replacement. Because we may not be able to honor that every single year, depending on what happens. It should, I don't know, Steve, if there's a way to do that, maybe we structure it as a policy, but it should not be an ordinance that's formally adopted that binds us.
That's fine. I didn't know which way you were going. That's why I
Yep.
asked. So
I'm just
But-
offering my thoughts on it. Council ultimately has the call. I'm just,
$30,000 would go to pruning or removal. You don't need to worry about replacing. The $30,000 wouldn't go toward replacing because you
Okay.
can't replace trees if you don't remove them. And you
Correct.
don't have the money to remove. So while we do have trees in the back there that can be used to replace, the $30,000 should go, I believe, to pruning or removal. That's where you're coming up short. Marcus.
I just want to clarify, we agreed to $30,000 more than was in last year's budget. Or this
Yeah,
year.
and I'll take $30,000 out of something else and put it
I know,
into that.
But I
That's
just
not a
want to make
problem.
sure it's not 30,000, it's $30,000 more than what we had in this year's budget.
In other words, if you look at the tree budget right now, wait a minute,
3,000 something.
hold on.
It's,
Nuts. Wait a second. I'm sorry. Bear with me here.
oh,
If you look at the tree budget right now, which is showing on your screen somewhere here. Sorry if I'm making you dizzy. I'm getting dizzy myself here. It's between these two pages. I'm just going to go to removal and pruning. I have in there 52,000 for pruning and 40 for removal. I'm going to add 30 to those numbers. That's what I'm doing.
okay.
Okay. So it doesn't make any difference where I'll split it or I'll put it all in one. I don't know, but I will probably take it from here, the 150, some from budget reserve, some from budget contingency. I'll look and see if anything else in revenue looks like it could go up, and that's how I'll get $30,000. And that's it. There
Okay,
you go.
good. Mr. Tomasic. You're mute.
Thank you. I agree with what we're doing here. So I think it's a good step in the right direction. However, the one thing that was discussed at the Tree and Shrub Committee involved pruning versus removal. We do not want to have a set percentage or anything that's associated with that as being separate entities, meaning that if we have $30,000 added, 15 has to go to one and 15 to the other. The point that they made was we may need a lot more for the pruning as opposed to that. So it shouldn't be segregated. It should be combined as a total for everything. So when you have those line items, it should be not 1, 2, it should be a combined 1 and 2, meaning pruning and or removal as a total amount of the budget, not as 2 individual components.
Okay, so in other words, you want one total line item that says pruning and removal, not 2 separate line items.
Just call it tree maintenance, and that would be include removal and pruning. I am concerned that we have been bidding this out to a tree removal service traditionally, taking the lowest bidder. I think it would be important if we have a little more money at hand that we get someone whose expertise includes the pruning and the maintenance aspects more than just the removal and grinding service, which has been mostly what we've been getting.
Well, right now, the bids have already gone out. I mean, you guys already authorized that, so I can't guarantee that. And one other thing you need to remember with the budget, once you approve it, you cannot change the bottom line. But once you approve it, you can move money. So for example, if we kept, just as an example, if you kept removal and pruning separate, despite what the Tree and Shrub Committee says, and I'd be happy to talk to them if you want me to, you council can always take $20,000 and move it from pruning to removal, or $20,000 and move it from removal to pruning. You can always do that. You're not locked in on a line item. That's a plan. If you see that you need more in one than the other later, and you know, I've explained that to Tree and Shrub before so many times, just like I had to explain different things to people here about how much is in your budget and how much is in your line items and things like that. So many times. This is only a plan. And council always has the ability to move money. You can move money if you want from the swimming pool concessions to tree removal if you wanted to. I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you can do that. You always are allowed to do that from any line item within the budget, as long as you don't change the bottom line.
Okay.
So in other words, I'll keep the same budget total. I'll find 30,000. If we have the time, I'll change it in the bookkeeping. If not, just for this budget, I may keep tree pruning and removal separate for this particular preliminary budget. And then I'll try to have it for the final switch, because again, these things take time to do. And I have a week. You know, it takes time to go through all this stuff. So that's what I'll do for the preliminary budget.
Okay. Are there
Does
any?
anybody have any other questions for me?
Okay. Are there any other?
I'm signing off then.
Are there any other issues that you need to bring up about the budget here? Okay, ARPA we've talked about. Bond issue we've talked about. There is a item under the committee business report where we had discussed issuing a request for proposals for an energy services contract to do professional audits and an energy management plan for the borough buildings. I want to seek the advice of the committee as to whether we can put that on for to vote on to do in the November business meeting. Are there any objections to issuing a request for proposals? We don't need to accept them, but we can issue. There are 10 companies registered with the state as qualified to do this kind of work for municipalities. And I would propose to send the RFP to all of them. Marcus?
I thought we agreed on that already, but
We did, but we didn't have it on the agenda until now because the committee
Okay.
agenda was too
But I
full.
thought I had a deja vu. But yes, I agree. I still agree with it.
Okay. Any objections?
It is also listed on a committee of the whole.
Oh, okay. All right.
I wasn't sure where it belonged.
But that's okay. I have no objections. If you want to do it in that committee, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah,
But the main thing is that we will need to put together a request for proposal. Does that need to go to a vote of council to issue a request for proposal? I didn't think so.
Well, that's what I want to ask.
Yeah.
The motion that was done under old business in October, I thought that included that. It did not? That wasn't part of it? The motion that was approved under old business in October.
I thought it was.
Me
Okay.
too, but it doesn't matter. If
That's why I was
Alright.
confused, although I
Well,
did put it under
If it has
both.
actually gone through, then we can just take this forward and I will draft a request for proposal and we can send it out. Okay? Okay, that's all we have then,
I'll double check the wording, and if not, I'll put a motion on it. If so,
if necessary.
I'll
Yeah.
I'll check. It's necessary to have it? Okay, I'll
I
do
said
that.
if necessary.
Oh, if necessary, yes, okay.
Because if we voted on it in October, I wasn't sure we had, because we had all that rigmarole going on. Okay, anything else for the good of the order for this committee? Are we all set? Okay, thank you.
good, thank you.
Yeah, I just need a few minutes for moving to committee. I'm sorry, a few seconds to move to committee of the whole. I'll be back with you in a minute. Okay, Mr. Tomasic, I'm fine with committee of the whole, okay?
Okay, before you start, just let me make a statement here. We are going to have an exec session on November 17th, which will be in person. We're going to have some legal and some personnel issues to discuss. I would like to also advise that we may need to have executive sessions in December. And the reason I'm doing this is because we generally have our committee meetings on Zoom. On December the 7th, after the Zoom meeting, we have done this in the past where we have met at the building for exec sessions in person. Please keep that date open should we need it. And then definitely on the 15th, after the meeting, we will have an exec session. I'm sure that these issues are not going to be resolved by that time. And in November, Mr. Corbel will be giving us some information on the 17th as to why this might be extended. So just please note that on your calendars for December. Okay, thank you, Mr. Morris.
Okay, a couple of things on manager's update, pretty brief. First, I'm ignoring the item A, my reminders, because there's nothing new on that. I repeated something I had under ops and policy at the end of the year reminders, including the citizenship award, because I forgot to include this back in September. So I'm not going to repeat all the things I said then last week under ops and policy, but citizen of the year, we did get 3 submissions, 3 recommendations or nominations, I guess I should say. And I attached those to your notes on the agenda here. The 3 recommendations we got or 3 nominations, I'm sorry, we got for Citizen of the Year. So you folks need to make a decision at the November meeting on those or somebody else, so you can award that in December. Does everybody see that on your agenda, or do you need me to show it to you? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I do have it. Do you see it there? It's the last page of your agenda. Okay, so I just need to know how you want to proceed whenever you're ready.
What are you referring to? The Citizen of the Year here?
Yeah, because normally you vote at the November meeting to award it in December.
I really don't know how to do this. I have been thinking about what we should do. Can we call one another? Can people discuss this on their own? Is this a legal issue? I've been trying to figure out how to go about this since we have 3 candidates, and I don't think there's going to be any consensus. In the past, there generally has been a consensus moving forward. So I really don't know how we structure this with the candidates that we have, and then vote for it on the 17th. Is that acceptable to everyone that we discuss it among ourselves individually and then discuss it on the 17th as
Is
to
it
who the
possible to
selection?
discuss this in the committee? This is a committee.
Yeah, we can discuss it in the committee. I'm talking about how we would come to a conclusion as to who would be selected. I'm asking for help. Marcus?
I'm wondering if we can ask Steve Corbel if we can do it in an executive session. Like, it's some kind of confidential, or it will be public eventually, but picking something like that shouldn't be a public deliberation. You know? So I wonder if that is maybe, hopefully, something we can do in an executive session. That would be the easiest if we are allowed legally to do that. But I don't know, because you can argue it's a personnel issue. I don't know.
Unfortunately, it doesn't fit into any of the exceptions. So my suggestion would be that council members discuss this individually offline, not as a quorum, and work through it that way. And following the sunshine law, you can all talk to each other individually and try to see if there's a consensus. And then if there is, someone can inform Mr. Morse to include that individual's name on the agenda for next Wednesday.
I have another question like later. How about if we tasked Bill to call each of us to just do an informal survey between the council members, and then Bill will collect the information, and then, because if he talks to one of us each, I think it's not sunshine law, and then he just collects the information and then communicates them forward. I think that should be maybe the cleanest way to do that, because I don't think we want to public debate that kind of thing.
Agree.
Okay, so how about this? Send me an email, copy Mr. Morris on it as to who you want to select. I will then, with him, we'll figure out who it is, and then, and then we'll announce it at the meeting. I'm conflicted as to, who to select. So that's why I don't know really where to go here, but I think that would be the best way. So individually, do not copy anybody else. Just send me who it is. Now, if you want to include why that's fine with me. All right. And I think that would be the easiest way. That way you have your selection, you send it to me. I have it in writing as to who it was. Right. And that means I go back through my emails and say, okay, this is who was selected based upon a written document. Is that okay, Mr. Corbel?
Yes.
I like that approach. And maybe a little bit more information. Well. Maybe people can say first choice is X and second choice is Y, to give maybe Bill a little bit more information. And then he can take it from there.
Okay. I'll look for that. And if there is no consensus, I'll at least just mention it or put it on the agenda under new business for council to make a decision without putting a name there.
Yeah, I would like to apologize because I really was conflicted as to how to do this. Anyway, that I think that's a solution. Thank you.
I think that works well. That works well. Thanks.
Okay, and you can look at the rest of my list of items that have to happen between now and January. The only other item I had, if you recall, last week I received from Cohen Law Group the final draft of the Comcast agreement, along with a resolution that I forwarded to everybody. They also gave an executive summary as part of the handouts that itemized each key point of the agreement. I copied Mr. Corbel on it in case he would have any comments. If you're okay with that, they're looking for you to approve the resolution on November 17th. I don't have anything really more to say about it other than that, so I'll stop. And if you guys want to talk about that or turn to Mr. Corbel or however you want to do it, that's fine.
I've reviewed it. It's fine. It's in line with the type of agreements I've seen other communities gain through Mr. Cohen's efforts here. So I think I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to consider it.
Okay. I'll have it on as a vote. That's all I have, Mr. Tomasic. I'm done.
Okay, thank you. That takes us to the solicitor's report. Mr. Corbel.
Wow, Mr. Moore stole my thunder with the Comcast agreement. I didn't have anything else to report other than Yeah, I was also going to request an executive session for next Wednesday, which Mr. Tomasic already mentioned earlier in the report. So that's it for me.
Okay, so I have an item that I want to mention at this time for you.
Okay.
We have already agreed to have an agreement with Chalfont for next year. However, we are going to change the conditions from a 4-year renewable type deal to 1 year. So you're going to have to take the present agreement and fit that in so that when we approve it, it is only going to be for the year 2022.
Okay.
Okay, so that takes that off my agenda item number 3.
And that's for both the police and the public?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And these intergovernmental cooperation agreements do not have to be adopted by ordinance any longer. It's we can do it by resolution. So.
Okay, good.
Steve, do you want me to send you the copies? We had been asked in here to adjust the numbers from the old agreement, but leave all the language the same.
Yeah.
Do you want me to send that to you? So
yeah, I'll just take a look at it and make any changes, and then I can even have a resolution ready. Do you all want to vote on this next week?
Yeah, sure.
Because we can, if it's a resolution, we have to worry about advertising deadlines and things. So yeah, Mr. Morris, why don't we just set it for the agenda next week? Send me those revised agreements. I'll revise them further if necessary, and I'll convert the old ordinances to a resolution and go from there.
Yeah, I'll get them to you tomorrow. Or I'll have Wendy do that. I think she might have them. I don't know if I have a final copy, but one of us will do it tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. Let's move to item number 4. Issues moved from other committees. Option policy, the mayor, he announced that booster shot distribution. Is there anything else to add, Mr. Mayor, to that?
Nope. I just want to make sure council's in agreement with that. And if so, I will reach out to my contact at the Allegheny County Health Department and start to put things in motion. And
okay, thank you. Is there any opposition to that?
I have no opposition, but I think you forgot library funding on your point number 3. You're mute. You're still on mute.
Bill, you're mute.
Am I unmuted now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. I'm hitting the key. Okay. So that again, 4B, Mayor, you had some concerns about the communications and preps on that. I guess you're discussing that with the chief. Is there anything you want to add to that? Okay. That's going to take me back to number 3, the report from the council president. I've already basically stated that we're going to continue to work on this budget. We're going to find the money for the tree and shrub request. We may have some tweaks. I will not, again, propose any increase in taxes. And we will continue to work on the preliminary budget until December. So some of those exec sessions may involve discussions. I'm going to go to letter B, and that is the library funding. I believe we have Ms. Erin Pierce on board, Mr. Morris.
Yes, Aaron, I just promoted you to a panelist, I believe. And so you are free to discuss with council. Aaron, you have to unmute yourself if you're not already. There you go. I see you.
Hi. Good evening. So Mr. Tomasic had asked me to join the meeting this evening to discuss library funding. I had submitted a request for library funding that asked for a standard cost of living increase based on the SSI index from what we had received last year. And, you know, I know that your evening is long. I don't want to bore you with details. I think I had already submitted any basic information to you, but Mr. Tomasic had seemed to think that there might be some questions, discussion, some things that I might be able to shed some light on. I'm here to do what I can do.
Thank you. I apologize. Everybody did get her informational sheet, correct? Everybody was forwarded that? Okay. Thank you. Sorry. Any questions? Well, I guess you've convinced everybody. I don't know.
That was easy.
Okay, well, if that no questions, then we'll move on. Thank you, Ms. Pierce, for attending.
No problem. Thank you very much.
All right. That takes us to the last item that was requested to be on the committee about the delineators at Dunkin' Donuts. I dread going down the path of this again, but I have to. Several years back, we had some problems with people exiting the Dunkin' Donuts on the field. Okay, just so everybody understands, if you make a rule, it doesn't mean that everybody obeys it. So if you just go down to Ardmore Boulevard and you take a speed gun and you monitor the speed of people going there, you'll find that there are a lot of people that break the speed limit. Not only do they go over the 50, which is that little set amount, they're well into the 60s. You know, the idea that because you have rules that people are going to follow them all the time, you know, just doesn't add up. But one of the problems we had with the Dunkin' was people were coming out and they were actually straddling the exit and entry. So not only could people not get in, all right, they couldn't get out because you'd have a car there. And we were trying to figure out every way possible in order to get that fixed. So one time I was out and coming home from Latrobe, and I saw the delineators that they had placed up by the Parkway exit in that Irwin area. And I said, that might work. So I brought it back. We discussed it in council. And it just so happened that Heartland was having that open house down there. Now, this was discussed in public about approaching them about the delineators. We then met with Anthony Brown. Steve Corbell was there, I'm pretty sure. Nina and myself, at least the three of us for sure. I can't remember if there were any other people. And of course, Mr. Braun. If it were up to Mr. Braun, we would not have had those delineators placed in. They didn't want them. All right. They were already angry about all the signage that we had up directing people how to turn, et cetera. So we said, well, maybe these delineators will work and we can remove some of the signs. So we put the delineators in. All right. And the agreement that we reached was very simple. You buy the delineators, we'll install them and maintain them so that we have that separation when you come in and out of the entry. So we did that based upon the fact that we had a little, what do you call that, an ace up your sleeve, in that we were trying to work in the borough right-of-way area so that even if they didn't want to do it, we were going to say, well, if that is the borough right-of-way, then we'll do it. But they were cooperative to that extent. And I truly believe from my analysis that it has helped quite a bit. It has separated the entry and the exit, and that was a major concern. So we've been living that like that for I don't know how many years. And occasionally someone will run over one of those things. And that's what they were meant to do, to give so that it didn't create any damage to the person's vehicle. And then you would be involved in a possible lawsuit. Yeah, you're putting these things up and it caused me damage to my car. So that is basically the entire situation involving, all right, this episode. Now, I'm going to mention one thing. I just don't get it, this obsession. Okay. In that same time period, I had met with Anthony Braun in his place of business. And I was in there talking to him about an issue, all right, that involved counsel that we were trying to work out. And out of nowhere appears Mr. Goro, who starts screaming at Anthony Braun in his place of business in front of his employees. He subsequently filed a complaint. We had to do an investigation. All somebody had to do was say, hey, listen, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it. Case closed. But that didn't happen. So because of his complaint, we were forced to do an investigation, which cost us over $10,000. Okay, $10,000. And people talk about, oh, well, they're spending time on this or that. So, I mean, I don't care what anybody wants to say. We as a borough decided to do that, and that's what we're going to continue to do. And if there's a new council on and somebody wants to do something, that is up to them. Mr. Goro?
Yeah, I have a few comments since you decided to bring up the investigation into me. I guess I could speak on that point, considering you were in there discussing giving them borough property for an indefinite amount of time in regards to parking spaces since they didn't meet the parking requirement. So that's what I heard in there. And that's why I interrupted the conversation. That's number one. So we set the record straight. Secondly, when the building that Duncan built at our old magistrate's building was being built, inside the original plans and the final plans that all of council should have, there's supposed to be a concrete pork chop that was supposed to be installed by Duncan and Heartland. That, however, never got installed. So that's why this issue, the delineator issue, had to come about. That brings me to case number 3. Case number 3 is you just got done charging Anthony Roman of the Roman Bistro $900 for dirt from a borough right away. But now you're installing delineators on private property in a borough right away. So if you're going to do one thing for one person, you got to do another thing for another person. It doesn't matter if it's borough right away or not. You shouldn't be installing things on private property for profit. And that is completely and utterly outrageous to have any kind of anything set up like that to install delineators at their place, because who knows when they're going to get knocked down and how frequently. And then our public works guys are using borough tax dollars to install these back on private property.
Well, he brought up the issue about the Mike Roman and the cost of $875. So I guess I have to deal with that as well now. So Mike Roman, without a permit, dug into the borough property. Okay, didn't get a permit, then accused our people of being liars. He shipped the dirt up to your house. All right, with you not having a permit either. Okay, and he had to know that the property didn't belong to him because he doesn't own any property down there. So therefore, we had to have a permit from him, a permit from you, and then he gave the restitution of $875, which was a bargain, I think, for taking property, borough property that did not belong to him. Now, I hope that we can end this. All right. And as a matter of fact, as far as I'm concerned, this meeting is over.
Just stop doing work on private property with borough tax dollars.
We are done.
Okay, I'm ending the meeting for everybody. The next time is the 17th.